Hey everybody, this is Mr. Maupin coming at you with another APUSH video. We're continuing our look at topic 3.10, Shaping a New Republic. Last time we were here, we were looking at how the French Revolution affected American foreign policy in the 1790s. And continuing with, concerns about America's relations with the European powers, enter in John Jay. Now, John Jay at the time was the first Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. And in a move that you would never see today, for example, you would never see Chief Justice John Roberts doing this, President George Washington will task the Chief Justice, John Jay, to meet with representatives from Britain to deal with some, issues between the two countries that have been kind of hanging around since the end of the Revolution. One of those concerns was the fact that despite what the Treaty of Paris said in 1783, in and around the Great Lakes region, there were still a number of British forts that were on American soil. Well, obviously that is an issue. On top of that, trade was very limited between the two countries, still kind of, a hangover from the Revolution. Of course, there's issues with impressment that we've already talked about. So we will see Jay be sent to meet up with the British, and this is going to prove to some degree to have some benefits, but it's probably more famous for being controversial. Now, in terms of arguable benefits for the treaty, we're going to see that British forces are going to promise to move out of the United States territories south of the Great Lakes region. Now, that's a really good thing. However, critics are going to argue that that's what the British were supposed to do after the Treaty of Paris in 1783, a decade earlier, and they hadn't done that. So critics like Jefferson are going to argue that how can we really trust the British this time? Furthermore, even though, yes, we are able to have what's going to be called most favored trade status with Britain moving forward, there's still not going to be any kind of a promise or commitment by the British to halt any type of impressment of American sailors. Now, when we look at how this is going to be affecting the United States, it's going to be another thing that's going to divide the Hamilton-led Federalists versus the Jefferson-led Democratic Republicans. Hamilton's forces are going to look at this and go, wow, this is a great deal. It's going to allow us to have a stronger relationship with the country that was our parent, the country that we have much closer cultural ties to, arguably the strongest nation in the world. So this is really good stuff. However, Jefferson's Democratic Republicans are going to hate this treaty. You're going to see parts of the South where Jeffersonians were more popular actually hang Jay in effigy in certain locations. So yeah, not liked particularly. And bottom line, the reasons being is that, from a Jefferson perspective, our ally is supposed to be France. And at a time when France is at war with Britain, it looks like we're making a peace deal with our ally's enemy, which should also be our enemy, which had been our enemy, just about 15 years ago. So Jefferson was very upset about that. There is a concern that basically the United States is just sucking up to Britain and will be Britain's little toady, little puppet moving forward. So this is going to be a highly divisive action that's going to be taking place. Now, that being said, as America is working out a peace deal with Britain, the Spanish are going to be interested in working out a peace deal as well. And that is going to lead to what's going to be called Pinkney's Treaty. Now, if we're looking at Pinkney's Treaty, this is going to be dealing with some important trade issues that are going to be happening in the Gulf of Mexico. First off, the city of New Orleans right down through here. Furthermore, there was a lot of question in terms of, what is actually the boundary between the United States and Spain following the end of the Treaty of Paris. So what Charles Pinkney does is work out a deal with the Spanish that is going to, first off, kind of use the 31-degree north line of latitude as that boundary, for the most part, between the United States and Spain. Spain getting the south of that and what's going to be considered East Florida through here and West Florida over here. With regards to New Orleans, even though that's still going to be staying under Spanish control, it's going to be an area that is going to have a lot of benefit for the United States in terms of trade. New Orleans is going to be a duty-free zone for American trade. So in many respects, the United States is going to get trade benefits in the city of New Orleans like the Spanish would. So it's not our territory, but from a trade perspective, it's almost like one of our own territories. So there's going to be some important benefits coming from Pinkney's treaty. So be mindful of some key foreign policy deals that are going to be made at that time. Now, in addition to the European powers, understand that in the Constitution, Native American communities are going to be viewed as foreign nations unto themselves. And so that's going to be affecting diplomatic relations, but also military action. And note, by the time we have gotten into the 1790s, there's still a question of, what Americans are going to be calling settling the frontier. We're talking about mostly what's going to be in the southern Great Lakes region up here and in the Ohio River Valley. Now, right up in here, just to the northwest of Dayton, we're going to be seeing a group of the Miami Nation, led by Chief Little Turtle, as you can see pictured right here, organizing armed resistance to the growing numbers of white American settlers moving out to that part of the country. Now, this is going to be extra problematic for many of these white American settlers because the natives that are going to be having guns, which will be many, where are they going to be getting their guns from? They're going to be getting the guns from the British. So this is going to be a concern. Now, note, this is still going on before Jay's Treaty is being hammered out. So the United States has concerns about protecting the interests of white settlers in the Great Lakes, Ohio River Valley region, and will be sending General Mad Anthony Wayne, pictured here, to take on the Miami and other allied tribes in that region. Now, what's going to turn into the Battle of Fallen Timbers is going to be another chapter in what is going to be a continuing narrative of the United States using its military forces to defeat Native American forces. And in the subsequent Treaty of Greenville, we're going to be seeing that the natives are going to be basically surrendering to white American expansion. Now, it's not the very end of native civilization in what's going to be the upper Midwest, but it's certainly moving in that direction for sure. So once again, another chapter in a very common narrative. Now, to round out taking a look at American foreign policy in the 1790s, that's going to lead us to the infamous Xyz Affair. Now, by the time we get to 1797, Washington had served 2 terms as president and had made the very significant decision to retire, not run for a 3rd term, though he easily would have won. That then is going to lead to more of a wide open contest in which John Adams is going to be prevailing. Now, when John Adams becomes president, he's still going to be inheriting the continuous problems going on between the French and the British and their seemingly never-ending war of the 1790s. Now, part of that problem that's going to be affecting us is the continued, use of impressment. And by the time we get to the 1790s, most of this impressment that's going to be done is going to be done on the French side. And note, Adams is a Federalist, so he's more in line with Hamilton's view of foreign policy than with Jefferson. So in other words, Adams was more of the mindset that, we should be looking to have a positive relationship with Britain and France as our, true military ally, that's not really as true of an alliance as it might say on paper, especially since France is now the main country that's impressing American sailors. So to try to address this issue, we're going to see President Adams send a diplomatic delegation to France led by future President James Monroe. Now, when they get there, they are going to be stopped by 3 French agents that are going to be known to history as Agents X, Agent Y, and Agent Z. Now, these 3 French agents are going to be telling the American delegation that if they want to have an audience with the French foreign minister, a guy named Talleyrand, that they would have to, show some respect. And what that basically means is start issuing some bribes. In other words, you're going to have to bribe those agents amongst some other French officials just to get an audience, to be able to work out some of these diplomatic issues. Now, note, what does this mean to the United States? Well, here's the thing. You're not going to be demanding these kinds of bribes from the Spanish diplomatic corps or the British diplomatic corps. So why do it to the United States' diplomatic corps? Well, it's a sign of a lack of respect. that the United States is this newbie, infantile country on the global stage, and not worthy of that same respect that you would give to the major powers at that time. Now, when word gets back to President Adams as to what had happened, as you can imagine, he and most Americans are pretty darn offended in terms of what has taken place. We're basically being viewed as not worthy of much respect. And so what this sparks is the heightening of tensions between the United States and France in a very, very significant way. You're going to see some folks in parts of the United States, particularly in New England, claiming millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute. In other words, we'll be darned if we, succumb to this attempted bribery, and rather we should spend that money to bolster our military forces to kind of force the European powers, particularly France, to show us some respect. Now, this is going to be leading to what is going to be, in many respects, America's first foreign war. It's not going to be an officially declared war. It's going to be more commonly called a quasi-war, meaning kind of a sort of a war between us and the U.S., between us and France. Basically, in the Atlantic, you're going to be seeing American naval forces firing on French naval forces, and vice versa. But note, something like that can certainly lead into or boil over into an official major war. And to give you a sense of kind of how close this gets, you've got Federalists like Hamilton that are really, really pushing John Adams to go to declare war. Like, we need to do this. We need to fight the French. Hamilton, in fact, is so hyped for this, he supposedly begins to get a general's uniform tailored for himself, because Hamilton is envisioning himself as once again becoming an officer in the military. There's even talk that Hamilton is trying to coax George Washington, out of retirement to try to have him lead American forces again, this time against the French. And so you've got this Federalist side that is really, really excited, really hyped up to hopefully go to war. Now, of course, the Jeffersonian side, is very, very fearful. They're concerned that, oh my gosh, if this goes to war, this is going to be bad news for the United States, a major problem. Remember, France is supposed to be our ally at the end of the day. So they're really upset about where this looks like it's going. John Adams, in some respects, is kind of caught in the middle. And John Adams, to his credit, is not going to succumb to the saber rattling of Alexander Hamilton and his subordinates, but rather will work out a deal diplomatically, without bribery this time, to end this quasi-war, this naval conflict between the U.S. and France. Now, when he does this, looking back historically, I think you can make a pretty strong argument that this was the proper, best course of action. It ends the conflict, prevents war at a time where you could argue we are not prepared to go to war with France, but it does earn Adams the enmity of Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton feels like he has had the rug pulled out from under him. He feels that Adams has double-crossed him. He feels Adams has denied him his ability to, be this war hero and to stick it to the French, who he never really liked in the first place. And Hamilton's not going to forget it. Moving forward, Hamilton is now going to be trying to make John Adams' life a living hell, which is kind of interesting because Adams, for the most part, is a Federalist already with Hamilton. But Hamilton takes this personally. And as we get closer to the election of 1800, we're actually going to see behind the scenes that Hamilton will end up, talk about, pretty wild, Hamilton will end up conspiring with Thomas Jefferson, his mortal political rival, to basically thwart John Adams' attempt at re-election. So understand, if you are the president, you have to make tough decisions. Adams, to his credit, once again, does what he thinks is best for the nation, which I think history has proven to be true. But at times when you make a decision that's controversial and maybe best for the nation, that might come with some short-term political consequences, and it certainly will be the case for John Adams. Okay, we'll leave it there talking about foreign policy. Next time we'll get into some domestic policy stuff in the 1790s. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.